unfortunately, here in this system, they're very time regimented, or we're relationship regimented. And so we kind of have to balance both and be able to start on time, because they will kick us out right on time, and we want to be able to make space for your voices in our side event. That's something that we have heard at some of our other side events we did, is that sometimes these events here is the only time that you get voice, because we can just see we all left the session and there's a lot of voices that still weren't heard, and then you only get 3 minutes. So we're all fighting in line for 3 minutes. Kind of crazy, but it's the system we're in. So bonjour, wabaganiqua Indigenous cause, makwana dodem, bigway miashi nishnabek. I'm Cora McGuire-Svet. I'm the CEO for the Ontario Native Women's Association. I see a lot of my Métis sisters in the room. I was Métis, well actually I used to be half-breed back in the day, but they used to call us half-breeds. I was a half-breed. Then transferred into non-status, I think it was, and then to Métis, now First Nations. And so I just like to frame it around identity. I've always known who I was as a person, as an Ojibwe woman. I grew up luckily because I had the privilege of having my relatives who supported our culture and connectivity, and so always reclaiming on who we are for identity. So, and with that, I just wanted to acknowledge that we start in ceremony. So something that we do as Indigenous women, and particularly Indigenous peoples, which is critical in this work, is that we do everything through ceremony, because our work is ceremony. The advocacy we're doing is ceremony. And so back at home, I really want to acknowledge Audrey DeRoy, who has lit a sacred fire today, and who is sitting with our sacred bundles and has lit our pipe while we do this work together. And I wanted to hand it over to Ingrid.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to take a moment. I'm Ingrid Green. I'm the Director of Research and Evaluation at ONWA. I'd like to introduce a couple of guests that we have joining us, and their names are Cass Fade, as well as Donis Pelche. Sorry, my mind, it just blanked right out of me. And then we have our grandmother, our Western Region grandmother here, Kitty Everson, who's also my mom. And so I'm going to hand the mic over to Cass, who's going to do our opening prayer for us.
Cass, you might have to come around. Okay. Maybe Donna, so you come up with me.
Yeah.
Right, yes. Koidesh, Donis will go first though.
Bonjour, Donis Indigenous, Nipki Benesik Nidigo Jibwemam, Megazina Dodem, and Nipkiwaju Nindonji. So my name is Donis Pelche. I'm from Forgone First Nation, or Nipkiwaju, which is Thunder Mountain, and my traditional name is Nipki Benesik, which is Thunderbird. I'd like to acknowledge today that we are on the traditional lands of the Lenape Indigenous people, and yeah.
How me wetch. Buju Ginawa, Neen Cassandra Dishnikas, Cassin Gugay, Mishki Gokumakidonji, Midash Kuchating, Ishkana Deniki, Giombikian, right? The main Dodem. So my name's Cassandra. I come from Mishki Gokumak First Nation, and I'm also from the Sturgeon clan. Longom Dash, Ingagwejamiku, Ikikanoyan, Gebu, Nin Ningagwe Natanishnabi, Gayabi Nawanakishwe, Gayabi Nawanakishwe, Gishpin Wanakishwean, Gami Nujada. So I was asked to do the prayer today, and I was just saying that this is my first time doing it. So if I make a mistake, please bear with me. And also, feel free to stand up. You don't have to stand up. Whatever you're most comfortable with when making your prayer, and please do it in the way that best suits you. So you can sit down, stand up, dance, hands out, whatever works for you. Kijay manadu, wadapin mau shina o asema, gana wenam Luigi wagana, gapne go indinawe magana, niji kwewak, gana wenam ijiwe biziwad. We weni je bemat izawad, je apikandat izawad, je bimiwaduwad, inendat izawad. We do cow, je jagu igusikwa, wego de gwen, ge we a pugitin guwa gwen. Ganawenam, Gigichi Aya Minanik, we do cow, we weni Jibamatizad, Apache Jibabam, and then na Sangitwa Ungwe, Oshkia, Mano, Ani Kikino, Amu Nangwa, Wegotagwen, Babam, and then in the Menima, Bois, Nangin Nangwa, Ganawendan Ikae, O Gidaki, no Commissionan, Kakina, Tabishko Ganawenam, Be Msajik, Ayajik, Awasiag, na Bikan, Metakamik, Be Mudajik, Kakina Ikae, we Jacek, no Denong, Namatabi Wak Manadug, Tabishko Kiwetanong, Wabanong, Shawanong, Ingabianong, we do cow Shinamwe Weni, Jawanishinamwe Weni, Gakina Ego, Indinoe Maganuk, Mia, Niji Kwayak, Mia. So I'm just saying a prayer to the spirits that sit in this direction and that they take care of us. And I'm also giving a special prayer to the women in the audience today and the young people. And the very specific message I share is that I'm asking the spirits and elders to be gentle with the young people as they're learning about how to be leaders at the forum and encouraging them to continue to learn along the way.
She's amazing.
I was just stealing Ingrid's mic. I get both mics today. Sorry, we're a little tired. We've been around the block a few times, so you may end up with some very cheesy humor today. So I will apologize at the front end for that. So yeah, we just really want to acknowledge in Caminos. We had breakfast with them this morning. We just met them, and the youth had asked for voice in our side event. And so of course we're going to make voice for youth anytime, and that's really what we really want to acknowledge, the youth and the youth voices here this week. It was really touching, and if anybody had seen me yesterday, I was crying a little bit. It was so empowering to see the youth standing behind each other, supporting each other as they all did their interventions, and as they all reclaimed their voice, and as they all took up their roles and responsibilities, which is speaking their truth and speaking the truth. And I just really wanted to acknowledge that. It was very, to be honest, at the end of the day, I guess you kind of get a little, I don't know what's the word, over the years, jaded. And at the end of yesterday, I had hope. I know I personally had hope. Hope for the future because of the youth's leadership.
There, I'll use my own mic.
Yeah, don't touch my mic.
Hello. So one of the things that we're recognizing here is that it's really important for the youth and their roles being here and representing themselves, speaking for themselves, and the issues that they face. So we're looking forward to hearing some more from Donis and Cass later in our dialogue portion of it, but the strength that it takes for them to be making their own interventions too, but their interventions on their own behalf, writing them and speaking to them. I think that was one of the things that they had brought up this morning in terms of recommending to us as an organization on supporting them in doing their work, is that it's important that they allow for that space to allow for that space for them to represent themselves and identify their issues and speak on those issues. So, okay.
Yes, and it was, you can see our youth up here. We brought our youth council with us. And so Shania, you can see her speaking. That was her first time public speaking. And she did it on the floor, doing an intervention, and she knocked it out of the park. So you really just wanted to acknowledge the leadership. And so the next slide. So we just really wanted to acknowledge that, how we operate as we incorporate Don Miguel Rura's Toltec teachings on how we need to restore balance. And so these are really the way that we operate, and to acknowledge that this is a space for Indigenous women and youth. Other events, we've had other activists come into the event around some, I don't know if I can say it, like right-wing type activism. So if you're an ally, this space is also for you, okay? I'm trying to figure out, how do I say this professionally? I don't know. Just to say that, those activists do have other opportunities and have other spaces. So I just really want to acknowledge it at the front end on that this is a space for Indigenous women, youth, girls, and allies. So it's a little bit about who we are here. So I'm Cora, this is Ingrid, and a little bit about who ONWA is. We've been around for a long time. We've been incorporated since 1971, and it's been over 50 years of great advocacy. And just really want to acknowledge that the leaders that have come before us, because if it wasn't for our ancestors or the women who came before us to reclaim who they are, who continue to drum their songs, who continue to practice their ceremony, who continue to practice their language, and it wasn't safe to do so. So we really want to acknowledge that their leadership, and because that's why we're here today, is to hopefully continue that leadership path, to make it a little bit easier, hopefully for the next generations, for them to do their work. How we do our work as an organization is, government says we're complicated. I don't think so. I think we're beautifully complex. Which means that, we don't sit in a bucket as an organization, thanks to the great leadership. And we have great leaders here in the room today who have supported us on this journey. We have our board of directors here who really said that we need to do our own systems, practice our own ways of being, which means that, we provide a direct service all across Ontario. We have 10 direct service delivery sites. We're also an association of over 30 Indigenous women's organizations and groups, and that means some of our membership also delivers direct services, and others are grassroots Indigenous women doing work in their communities. And we're also a research policy and advocacy leader. So we work provincially, nationally, internationally. I tried to say no to national, international, but they just said no to me, so here we are. And doing very well, so I just want to thank them for that.
So part of why we're here is we wanted to, one of our main focuses and goals in our work is that we want to break those barriers for systemic change. And one of the things that we've done is we've taken like a flower framework where we look at it as planting seeds for change by amplifying the voices of Indigenous women and youth knowledge and expertise. The petals on the flower represent the issue areas that have been identified by the women that we work with and listen to. And we make systemic change by ensuring accountability, doing research, impacting legislation and policy, and developing programs, education, and using a community development framework to make change. One of the examples of making change is we did an engagement for the Journey to Safe Spaces report when we started going into the human trafficking work area. It's one of our issue areas that have been identified by our board of directors and our membership. And the Journey to Safe Spaces report, we engaged with over 2,500 community members and service providers, as well as 250 self-identified human trafficking survivors. And we learned from them. We learned so much from them because they were the ones who let us know that we needed to develop relationships with the police to help them, the police understand who they were, and to help them to see them as human beings. Because we work 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, that relationship with the police was essential because those are the people that are responding to their calls for service at 2 or 3 in the morning. They also, in this report, it's almost like a guide to how to work with human trafficking survivors, so we do training on this work and how others can pick up that bundle and help others if that's the work area that you're going into. Our second report that we use to show as an example is a Reconciliation with Indigenous Women report. When the final inquiry was going on in Canada, we're having such a hard time getting at that table, and all we wanted to do was help. So we were able to, take what we had heard repeatedly from over 5,000 Indigenous women and make our recommendations and be able to say, we wrote our own report and we're still trying to, get government to say, here is what we know to be true. But if not government, then others can use it as they need to as well.
Yes, and the Safe Spaces report was also done in partnership with many of our partners, and I see our Métis sisters in the room. And so this report is was collectively developed with Métis Nation Ontario, the Native Women's Resource Center, Chiefs of Ontario, Anishinaabe Nation, and Fort Frances Tribal Health. So I just really want to recognize them as well. And the reason we do our own reports, because we know that when women lead, and because we can sit and listen to each other to understand in order to enact the recommendations, versus many times when people are engaging with us, they're listening to respond versus to understand. And that kind of leads us into our next slide here, and this is really about who's defining the process. So when we're looking at breaking down systemic change and looking at who's guiding the process and whose systems are we in. So essentially, we did a side event earlier this week for anybody who was here. I think there's a couple of people who were in our event on Kia ora. We did a side event earlier this week, and we asked the participants on who represents you. And representation is critical. And so a lot of what we heard, that self-determination, is about reclaiming our own voice, and that it's the matriarchs who represent us, and that no one represents us, we represent ourselves. And really that's part of this system here, and the mechanisms are really trying to do that. That's so what we're finding in typically this is in the Canadian system. I would maybe argue that this could be globally how processes are working. So typically you have a top-down approach. So if you can see at the top, right, the government, whoever's politically elected, they're the ones who are defining the processes. They're defining the priorities. And then what we have to do as Indigenous people, we have to respond to them, right? So that they're creating priorities, and we as agencies and we as people are responding to this top-down approach. And we can recognize whenever there's a change in government or politics, a lot of the policies then fail or are retracted or changed. And so we really have to look at some of the political context, which is in the middle. You've got jurisdictional issues. I'm hearing lots about revenue, right? We recognize there's this economic development connection to violence against women, violence against Mother Earth. We can never forget that there's, that money is that root cause to some of the issues we're seeing. You've got government policies, program policies, and then you've got, outside of all of this, you have communities' needs, which is really sitting out here. And so how we lead in community is from the top, or the bottom up approach. We start where communities' needs are at. And every community is unique, has their own unique needs, and therefore has their own unique solutions. So what I see in my community of Thunder Bay is different from communities in, urban Indigenous Toronto, for instance, or what's happening in my community versus what's happening in, Australia or New Zealand or Mexico. There's similarities about what we're facing because you have the same government type system, the colonization happening. So we really want to acknowledge how to make this change. And there's a change, well, I guess it's like a pyramid, but I really don't care, it's it's more like a teepee, I think, for my area. So at the top of the least effective way to make change at the top would be to tell somebody. Yeah, I'm gonna tell you where to put her glasses on. Well, that works, but I
I listen well sometimes.
the next effective way to make change is to relate in relationships. So he's like, okay, well, we're in a relationship together, so maybe that's why she listens. I'd be like, but the most effective way to make change is on modeling, role modeling. So role modeling the change that we want to see in communities, and so that's really what we try to focus on as an organization. That we talk about Indigenous women's leadership, and so therefore we need to be role models for what that looks like. And so therefore we have to lead based off of like heart-centered leadership, and not just lead as the males would lead in these systems.
So for both that last slide as well as this work, one of the people that I'd like to recognize is Joan Riggs from Catalyst Consulting, because she's helped us to get to this place through helping us to develop these frameworks. So I'm going to talk about the Indigenous gender-based analysis that we've developed. It's been gifted to us by knowledge holders and the collective voices of Indigenous women. In the center there, we have our 13 recommendations from our reconciliation with Indigenous Women report, and the analysis, or the turtle, kind of represents us as Indigenous women in the sense that if Indigenous women are well, everyone is well. We all have come to this space with a gift. We all are on the earth, and we have our own individual gift. And with that gift, we serve ourselves, family, community, and nation. And in doing so, we take care of those community needs that are there, recognizing that, that's who we are as Indigenous women. We're the helpers in community. We serve our people. But it's also about balance and restoring our roles and our responsibilities as Indigenous women. The center, outside the recommendation, are those issue areas that Indigenous women navigate 365 days of the year, and they're very intersectional. You can't experience one without the other: health, policing, justice. But an example of this is that we know that when Indigenous women are interacting with the child welfare system, it has other correlations with homelessness, as well as human trafficking, and then that directly correlates to missing and murdered Indigenous women. So there's that intersectionality that Indigenous women, are constantly navigating.
And we can remember that these systems are not designed by us or for us. Many of these systems were actually specifically built to discriminate against us. So when you're unpacking a system, I always make fun of, you can't change the name of that system and therefore the racism's gone. You have to really break down and look at those issues, and at the same time build new systems that are actually working. So the next slide is around, as we heard during the opening ceremonies, Indigenous women are the main agents of change, and really being able to reflect on, so we have the UNDRIP, and how do you apply UNDRIP with a gender lens, and looking at, so for instance, we as Indigenous women, we have collective and individual rights with international human rights law. And, so these, to be able to take the work of the UN and be able to apply your own lens to it, that's the piece I think that needs to happen next. I think, we really need to look at what strength-based indicators look like with the UNDRIP. So if you're to take, that we have a right to self-determination, what does that mean, for us? In developing those indicators, I think that's maybe a recommendation that we should be looking at on the floor, to be able to tell one of the UN bodies to say, we want to see a report. We're here. You can direct them to work, but you need to be able to direct your intervention to a UN body for them to do something for you. So, you know, here's something that we're looking at for the future, to be able to say maybe we do an intervention that directs a very specific UN body like CEDA or the Rapporteur or somebody to be able to say, we want to see this. And then they have to go out and engage on and develop those guidance documents on how to implement this. Because Canada is implementing an action plan. It's not gendered though. And so, and because in here, we do have a right to individual rights as well as collective rights. The other key document, actually I was meant to ask this earlier and I forgot to, sorry. Who here, is this your first time attending? Anyone? So, yeah, it's overwhelming. Congratulations, you made it through the first few days. It can be overwhelming, this system. Yeah, you know, trying to figure out and navigate, you know, where to go and where to be. There's so many events. For us, we built a couple of things, such as looking at CEDA General Recommendation 39. And this is something you'll hear lots from people who've been around for a while, because this is our rights as Indigenous women. And it's actually higher up than the UNDRIP. So it's the rights of Indigenous women, and then UNDRIP falls underneath it. So just like, it's a document that if you're interested in Indigenous women's rights, that you may want to read. And we built a little video just because when we first came, it was so overwhelming. And we really wanted to be able to take our resources to build something to gift out to other women to know that, you know, international advocacy is an option. So we'll play the video. Turn it down.
Globally, it's very important for ONWA to be included and to move forward on an international level. So Indigenous women are acting and creating the change they need to see in the world.
I don't know that if we ever went back to say other women that had worked for the organization previously, did you ever imagine us at the UN? And I don't think that would have been something that they ever saw possible, and yet it's happening.
It was an amazing feeling to walk into the UN building. My passion for the work that we do was amplified by being in the presence of people who inspired me.
One thing that we have learned over the time is that international advocacy is an option. I don't think a lot of people realize it's there. What is your purpose? What exactly do you want to do is question one. And then you can start to plan around how you're going to use these international mechanisms to further your advocacy efforts.
I think about the work that we do when we go to these international events, such as the United Nations in New York or Geneva. It's important for us to represent ourselves and speak for ourselves.
Building those relationships with other Indigenous women and organizations from around the world and finding commonalities and ways forward.
You know, I think we were looking at Rwanda. It's so unique, you know, the situation that's happening here and how they're recovering from their genocide. And in Rwanda, you know, we're hearing about how in terms of women in decision making, that more than 60% of the parliamentary seats and 46% of cabinet positions are occupied by women. You know, we in Canada still have a long way to go to advance gender equality for all women in Canada. We cannot leave Indigenous women behind.
Cora, what is your goal for this conference? What do you hope to accomplish while you're there?
Looking to pass the torch on to Autumn and other youth, I think is one part of the goal. We've made a commitment to always bring and offer at least one space for youth every time we travel to do any of the international work.
The benefit for ONWA youth to attend these gatherings and these conferences is an opportunity to learn, an opportunity to hear people's stories and to communicate what our issues and similarities are.
When we talk about opening doors for our young people, we took our youth board members there, and they were able to speak and do interventions at this global level.
Listening to the youth speak was, to me, so powerful because it's their present and it's their future. And to hear them talk with such passion about what needs to get changed and what needs to be changed. And they're very forthright in what they want to say and what they want people to hear.
The youth are our leaders of tomorrow, and we as leaders today need to be able to make space for them, space for their voices, space for their leadership.
The ONWA leadership has been so amazing at intentionally creating space for youth at these forums. Indigenous women are the experts in their own lives and experiences, and we need to be the ones leading the way. We have the answers from working with our communities, from the knowledge of our ancestors that have been passed down generation to generation, and we know the way forward to create safer and healthier communities, not only for Indigenous women and girls, but for everyone.
I took experiences home that would make me a better board member because I realized that what we do here is important, but if we can expand what we do here globally and we can create partnerships and get to know other people globally, then we can share best practices, we can share policies, we can bounce ideas off each other, what works, what doesn't work. Being at the UN was just, as a board member, it was just one, and individually as a person, an Indigenous person, it was a very enlightening and humbling experience.
When we are in these spaces, we're learning about what's happening in other countries. That could be useful for us, like how other countries are delivering healthcare services to the Rimini community that we're not necessarily even thinking about. So it enables us to come back to our work here in Canada and say to ministries and governments and people that we're working with, hey, we could be doing this better and here are some solutions.
There's a fear that some people feel in traveling the world and experiencing it, taking chances to have your voices heard and reclaiming your voice. We do have capacity as Indigenous, although we don't need others speaking for us. We have the capacity, we have the skill sets, we have the knowledge, and now it is time. It is time for us as Indigenous women to claim that leadership space, to demand it, to take it, and to take the action with us.
Association gave me the opportunity to attend this event, and I'm looking forward to continuing this great work that ONWA's doing.
What was really great to hear and see was our community members and our board members and our senior staff advocating for changes on a global level for preservation of our heritage, our knowledge, our ancestral traditions. We need to get back to relying on those, using those to help Mother Earth heal itself for our grandchildren and our grandchildren's grandchildren.
It was a great message when we talked about language and how to, because I think that's what a lot of the communities are doing right now, trying to get their language back.
How about you, Lynn, as a youth member?
Yeah, it's so exciting to be here, and I feel like it's such an uplifting experience to be around such strong women. So that's been my favorite part of this whole journey.
My experience was amazing. I'm always honored to come and be a part of the ONWA delegation and to share Indigenous women's experiences and listen and learn about what's happening in other Indigenous communities globally.
How'd you like New York, Kitty? The United Nations.
Too big.
So for all you first-timers, we've all been there. And that's why we wanted to create this space, was for us to come together. And And then, here's like, we've been around doing this now for about 5 to 7 years. So, we're getting a little bit more kind of complex into our work here. So we're looking at like where to direct our advocacy. The next slide. Looking at what needs to happen next, and so looking at some of the implementations. There's all of these recommendations already done and that states need to act upon. So these are some of the documents to read if you're interested. And we always come here prepared with our key messages. So these are just some of our key messages, because we hear and we have heard that what we need to do is share knowledge, and we have to learn from each other. And we're always happy to share what we've learned. Feel free to take what you need and leave behind what you don't. This is all about us collectively moving the movement forward, because we need to organize ourselves in order, because the system is so huge. We can make a great impact across the world, which is why I believe governments and the system continues to hold on to colonization so tightly. And we just did, some of the conversations we've heard, at our previous side event, is really looking at, a space where Indigenous women are heard and respected, nothing about us without us. And, these are like some of the, these are about the voices and what the system needs to do in order to make the change. And we want to continue to have the conversation, because this is some of the conversation we had before, which is on who represents you. And it's the matrix, and we really need to have, what's next is we need safe spaces to exist, which really leads into, I think, the more engaging fun part, as opposed to us sitting up here talking. It's we want to strategically seek your guidance and your wisdom on, what does a safe space look like for Indigenous women here at the UN? Whether it's the permanent forum or CSW or MRIP, what does that look like? And we would really love if you would share your thoughts. And we have paper and pens and coloring, everything on the tables. And so feel free to draw, feel free to write words, make a statement, and we'd be honored if you would then share back with us. We'd love to compile a report at the end of it. So. We'll take a little bit of time now, so feel free to use the paper and pens in front and let us know, what does a safe space look like for you?
No, I'm Cora. I am Coro.
You're Coral?
Yes. From Basque Country.
From where?
Basque. Basque Country.
Basque Country?
Yeah, and it's from Ecuador.
Muchas gracias for I tried a little. My señorita, my daughter moved to Mexico, and so now I'm trying to speak a little Spanish. Espanol.
Space with risk zero, like
So we're going to offer everybody a chance to share what they've written. If you'd like to share your thoughts and share what you've written down, we'll bring the mic as far as we can to you. So anybody want to share what they have to say?
So I'm very fortunate that I was at CSW and here. I've also been to 2 COP events in Egypt and in Sharm el Sheikh. Much more busier than this, much more busier. But what I wanted to say was that the thing that I've really noticed here is that there's other voices speaking for us. At CSW, it started with 5 men speaking before any woman spoke. And it's the Women's Forum, right? I noticed yesterday there was a lot of adults speaking for youth, and the youth did not have, and they were doing great interventions, and it was marvelous to see them go and support each other. You know, they're modeling what we should be doing and supporting. And I think, you know, for me, I just think, you know, and I don't mean offense to anybody, but male voices only when required. You know, we are very well, we're gifted with our voice and our mouth and our thoughts, and we are very well, we're good to articulate our own ways of thinking and being. And when I think of a space, you know, I think I always go back to our mother, our earth, you know, and having it nature-based and having it close to Mother Earth so that we are able to ground ourselves in these spaces. One of the things I noticed is that you pack on a lot of garbage in these spaces. So being very intentional when we're in those, that we leave, you know, and having a space that we can go to would be very, I think, important. And I've noticed that when I've gone to the environmental COPs, there's no space for us, and it's really stressful. And so having a place where we can just go and breathe, maybe smell some sage or, you know, our smudge, you know, would be marvelous.
First of all, I want to give you greetings in my language, Mata. My name's Lokawa Margaret. I belong to the Tato clan. I come from Uganda, and I'm also a women's leader, an Indigenous women's leader. Now, first of all, I want to appreciate and thank you for the very good work you are doing. From the first day I attended your meeting here, although I didn't take a lot, but I was able to see that you are wonderful sisters doing a lot of great good work. Specifically on this meeting of today, actually I have learned a lot about your organization from the script that I saw, and these issues are really very important and critical to Indigenous sisters. And what I know is, as Indigenous women, our issues are common. We have a lot of common issues, ranging from domestic violence, disappearances, and environmental issues that we face from the governments that we belong to. You know, we are not equally represented. We are always at the lower level, and perhaps it's even worse in some parts of the globe. Being an Indigenous woman, you know, men take that hierarchy of thinking that they are more important than women, and what they say is final. And so sometimes I see these issues of us, Indigenous women, more or less being the same that we face from whatever kind of the globe you come from. And so when I listen to your presentations of these important women in front of us, I've seen it as an opportunity for us Indigenous women, you know, to network, because we learn from one another and we carry that traditional knowledge, we carry that Indigenous knowledge that we have learned. You know, women have acquire more knowledge because they stay with the grandmothers, with their mothers, and so we carry that knowledge. And I'm happy that the young daughter of ours was able to give that special prayer, you know. So I'm so humbled, whatever language you used. I felt that prayer of yours that you made. So it's very important for us to network. And of course, such meetings, either from the Permanent Forum or MREP or the CSW, side meetings are always informative because there's something that brings us together. And you can learn more from the side event than when you learn from the plenary, because plenary you are given 2 minutes, but when we come here maybe for an hour, in the kind of group that we have, we're able to listen and understand from one another. And for me, I would say it is a blessing for me to be together with you all sisters today and listen, because what I've picked is more than what I've heard from the plenary. You know, you are given a statement for 3 minutes, you don't really grasp it very well, and so they are telling you to stop, the bell has gone off. And some people are not confident, somebody is reading very fast, but here you can see on the script, you can explain, and then I listen. So I think this kind of events should go more and more, in case they're always in these forums. And also we could also have conversations on much as we are far from one another, you can always organize conversations and we discuss our issues. We give when you discuss your issues and when you talk, it's a healing process, you know. You gain knowledge and you feel you are getting a healing process. You may be discussing something not knowing that it is attached to my life, you know. So I add that this kind of conversations continue. Thank you, that's what I wanted to say.
You have to come up here. The mic doesn't get all the way back there.
Hello, my name is Salvador. So I actually came here thanks to my organization, AMA Peru. It's an association of Indigenous women. Here is my sister Maria, grandmother and leader of the community. I grew up in a community that values women for all of our things because women are the only ones that can give life. And for the Indigenous community, life is the only thing that cannot be changed for anything. No money, no materials, nothing, just life. Women here have the potential and capacity to give me an opportunity to participate here. So I want to thank you for all the effort that are you doing. And for my grandmother, I just want to say that I came here in order to look for opportunities, not just for them, but for every people, every child that wants to do something. And women is just the ones that came here, teach me how to explain my arguments, how to talk in public. I wouldn't be here if there was no for women. So I appreciate all the things that my mother, my grandmother teach me, the spirituality, the connection with Mother Earth, and I think that that's the most important thing that women can do here, because woman creates, and that's something that you cannot change. Please, we have to have safe spaces for women, because if there's something that cannot be changed, is that your lives are meant to be. I wouldn't be here if all of you wouldn't unify here. Thank you to all of you.
Okay. I just wanted to say thank you for that as well before I speak on what my safe place is. That's very powerful, your words, and like emotional and really hit me to my core. I also grew up being surrounded by a lot of strong Indigenous women, and that's why I think I'm here today as well, and so thank you. For me, my safe space, as a young Anishinaabe Kwe, it's important to me to preserve my culture and traditions of my community. So my safe place is the sugar bush on my community. We make maple syrup. And that's a safe place for me, as in that community, in that space, youth, elders, the land, all voices are heard. We listen to what the youth want to say and what they feel needs to be done in order to make sure that the trees are respected, the land is respected, and our culture and beliefs are respected. So for me, it is important to not only hear the voices of, at the United Nations, it's important for me to hear the women's voices, the youth's voices, as well as the land's voices, and as well as the voices of people who are not here today and are unable to speak for themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's 2:13. Yeah, is there any one? Of course.
Me mihi ka tika kia koutou. Te tūtai ka miha te ki ngā mana whenua ki ngā tangata whenua o tēnei whenua. Tuarua kia koutou. Nā koutou e pōhiri mai ki a mātou. Kia tai mai I konei I tēnei ahi. It is my first time in this forum. And I'm just very excited to be here to touch base. But it was a bit of a mission getting in here. It was like Fort Knox, really. But I did want to thank you for inviting us into this forum, and hopefully we can see you down under from Aotearoa, New Zealand. We're from New Zealand, and we're having our national conference in October, so I'm hoping that we can extend that invitation to you down here. But in terms of safe spaces, I think it's really important that we can bring our languages, you know, just a wonderful time to be able, as you said, tautoko ngā mihi kua mihia, as you said, to come in and wānanga and just get more than a minute to say a few words and talk about the issues that are on top. For us down under, we have a rogue new right coalition government who are trying to double down on the racism and eradicate our language and our indigeneity altogether. They even actually want to repeal, it took us a little while to sign up to the United Nations Declaration for the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. They're trying to get rid of that. So really interesting times for us in Aotearoa, but we're strong, we fight. We really do a good job of making our voices heard in Aotearoa. And with that note, I'm not going to be ka kore rawa e whakaroa, me roa te kōrero. Ngai ka hoa te raka kōrero ki a koe, he pai te rongo atu ki te reo o te rangatahi, tū mai koe, ki tara mai ki te kōrero, me koe anō hoki, pānui ngā peta, hamuria. So lovely, thank you. Great to be here. Can we have a photo, a group photo at the end of this? Please?
I'm not going to take too much time. Engari, e mihi ana kia koutou, a neira te reo te rangatahi, e mihi koa te kia koutou, huri noi tēnei ruma, tēnā koutou katoa. That's my mother. As you can tell, I've been absolutely put on the spot, but supporting what she says. And I'd like to have maybe a space where we can just be unapologetically Indigenous, have our language flowing, learning the languages of other Indigenous communities, and just kind of hanging out and getting to know each other in our own Indigenous ways. Kia ora. Tēnā.
Tēnā tātou. I'll read our list of what it means to have a safe space for Indigenous women. So our voices are valid, and we should not need any other committee or group to validate our voices. We'd like to see engagement across the generations. We'd like to see ways to get to know and relate to one another as Indigenous women in our own Indigenous ways. We'd love to see a round forum in the beginning where everyone can do what we call mihi mihi, or introduce ourselves in our ways with our ceremonies and in our languages. Indigenized spaces. It's beautiful to see women dressed in their Indigenous garments and wearing tāmoko and other signs of our indigeneity. And finally, time. Enough time to wānanga or discuss the issues that we care about. Kia ora.
Yes, kia ora. And we are planning to have a delegation come down to your forum, and so, and we will be bringing a youth with us as well, so our Métis sisters want to join in and reach out to Radiant sisters. Jen's like, oh boy. No, thank you for that. I think a lot of what we're hearing, and then feel free to gift us your work and your papers. If you like, we will still take them if that's okay. And you really validated a lot of what we were thinking and what Indigenous women in Ontario have said what safe space looks like, which is really the restoration of that leadership balance. We've been out of balance for so long, from colonization, patriarchy in particular, and really want to acknowledge that the young boy from Peru, and he's already role modeling what it's like to be a kind man and a male leader who is here to support us and protect us and to speak out with and for the women, because women are life givers and are teachers and practice on our culture. And really looking at a space, that safe space of being on the land, practicing our teaching, practicing our ways of being in balance with the land. That's where we're right now. We're not in balance. And you can see, I was hoping with, with the eclipse happening, I'm not sure if anyone else felt it. I just felt this immense change. I just felt this immenseness that day. I know we were out of sorts that day as a team because we decided to go and have a management meeting that day at that time, which was not a good idea. Just so next eclipse, anybody, don't have a meeting during that time. you know, but it's also the reclamation of all voices. We can't leave anyone behind, so we have to look in the room, like who's missing. And, you know, like, for instance, like our Inuit sisters in, you know, in the north, like, being able to look and be able to speak, you know, in our relationship with them, what are their issues, and are we bringing them to the table when we see they're not there? Or are we saying, whereas, you know, our other sisters that are missing, or who's missing from this conversation? And I love leading across the generations. And I think that's what we need to do, because the youth are gonna have to take up all this work. We're gonna have to pass on the torch one day, and pass on the microphone. And so really looking at, and I love that being unapologetically us.
Yes.
Right? Like, this is the change. The world needs us. And so we need to be well, we need to support each other. I've, you know, did this for a bit in my life, my career, and I think the biggest part for me where I see the change, the most beautiful work is when we're working together, when there's that safety, where there's no lateral violence. Because when it's hard being a woman, particularly hard when you're an Indigenous woman, and, you know, looking at, and I think it's just that the woman tearing down woman because that's what the system has done, right? Where we've got internal colonization, and so we need to really just be mindful, because the youth are watching us. Yes. You know, so when we're not kind to one another, you know, we need to be able to kind of look at each other and say, okay, we need to, maybe we have to restore ourselves. We need to stop, take a break. We have to care for ourselves, because the world needs us right now. And so we as women, we need to support each other. And I think we just really need to be extra mindful and really look at our own healing. Is if we're not healthy and well, we're not useful for our community. And so I just really wanted to acknowledge all the women in here today, and our young gentlemen as well, for being able to create this safe space where people could speak their truth, people could speak to what they see is needed in the community. And just to be able to, like, no?
We're not doing that question.
Oh, okay, never mind, I guess we're not doing that question.
I was like, no.
See, she's role modeling a relationship with each other, so therefore I can listen to her. No, but we really wanted to just acknowledge each and every one of you on the journey. And something we're always doing is look at how we incorporate healing and culture. And so we'll just take a little bit of time here for our closing. We're going to do a drum song that we didn't practice. Normally we're practicing outside today. I just was, oh, hopefully this goes well. So maybe we get some help.
No time to practice.
So we do have the drum song that we would like to sing, and then we can take a group picture. So feel free to jump in as we begin to sing. We'd love to have you join in, and the lyrics are here. So maybe that way, yeah. Is that it? I think so.
So the song that we're going to sing today is the bear song, and the bear represents that healing work that we all do, and that bear helps us with that medicine and carries that medicine to that good place. So teaches us about the medicines and is medicine. So if you know the song, please feel free to join in. If you don't know the song, hum along, dance, do whatever you need to do. Okay, so